As Jeremy shared with us in the reading from the balcony, God knocks on the door of his house. I'd like to rent some rooms here for my son in your house. God, the Almighty, the Master of the universe, is asking, and then takes no for an answer. Well, there's an attic room. He won't be in the way. I guess I could let him have that. I don't want to lose my freedom. But, God says, the ironic thing here is that by renting more space to my son, your freedom will increase. You'll discover a freedom you've never known so fully. Well, God says, I don't really know how this works. Sounds strange, but I know it does, and I ask you to trust me. Well, thanks, but I need to take my time, says the man, and think all this over. And God says, that's okay. I'll take what I can get. I like what I see here. Notice the affirmation. It's like, I think that by my becoming part of your house, great things can happen. You're on the way. Is this the same God that most of us have internalized from our childhood? I doubt it. We are very familiar with the God who takes charge, the God who's tough, has many rules, is aggressive, ready to judge and punish. Now, I'm not saying we don't believe in a God with standards, but sometimes certain aspects of God take precedence over others. And I suspect that most of us learned about the God who I just described. This God sounds like a different being altogether. But God knows the deeper truth. Nothing is gained by forcing someone to comply when it comes to faith. We either choose to give ourselves away in love, or it simply isn't love. It's something else. The kingdom is not furthered by scaring us into compliance. Now, as parents, we know that a little fear can go a long way sometimes and help us to get through. You better watch out, or I'm going to tell your father, and that used to work for me. My mother would say that, and that worked. But we have to decide for ourselves just how we're going to spend our lives and who we're going to rent rooms to. And do you know what frustrated and angered Jesus the most when he walked this earth? The way people so often and so casually exercise their freedom to seek something else entirely with their life and their energy. Not overtly evil, but certainly not the things that are our best. We settle for things that are less than all too often. And then, after being put off, politely, but put off, what does God do? God walks away. God walks away. Sounds strange, but think about it. Doesn't it sound strangely true? Don't we all do that more than we would care to admit? God, this is my house, and I want to be myself in it. God, this is my life. You can fill in the blank. This is my skin. These are my choices. Yes, you have the freedom to do what you want with your life, says God, short of hurting others. But I'm offering you life on a different level. Can you taste it? Can you sense it? The most precious gift we have ever been offered. And so often it remains unreceived. Like at Christmas time, I would say it's a gift that sometimes remains unopened. And Jesus said, according to the Gospel of Matthew, whoever welcomes you welcomes me. He could have ended it there, but the point wouldn't have been as profound. Then he says, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. That's theologically profound. And that's what got Jesus in trouble, because they twisted his words and said he's identifying himself completely with God. He's saying blasphemous things. We can't let him speak. We have to silence him. And when he wouldn't be quiet under normal threats, they went to the final solution and killed him. He trusted the Spirit within himself, and he knew that when he interacted with others at that level, it grew. He knew that if you got to know him at his depths, you would encounter God. But he also knew that happened with other people. Remember last week's sermon when I shared the example of the 10-year-old girl in Rwanda 20 years ago when they're right in the middle of the genocide, 20-year anniversary of that horrible time. She looked at her killer, and her last words were, "If you knew me, you would not kill me." 10 years old. Those are the last words she said. She was saying something very close to what Jesus was intending. He was not showing off. He was telling the truth as he knew it to be. The image of God is in each of us. If I take the time to get to know the real you, I discover that at the core, we are so deeply connected that it is like we are one. If we all knew each other in this way, there would be no more killing, no more brutality, no more war. But it's hard to see each other this way. And we settle for something less. Willie Sordillo, a member of our mass conference staff, tells of a time when he felt deeply known in this way. And for many of us, it's episodes. It isn't like the flow of our lives. It's like a flash of light. We need to remember them. This is his story. He entitles it, "Stranger in a Strange Land." Years ago, he said, out of great trust or great foolishness, and I would say probably both, I hopped a plane to Mexico on short notice to meet an author whose writing had affected me profoundly, just on a whim. But he didn't think it through. The foolish part was that I had not made lodging arrangements, and my Spanish was wanting. I did have a housing list, and I found I was destined to go spend the night at a convent. So a long bus ride into the countryside later, I arrived not at a convent, but at a monastery. Less than welcomed, I was offered a phone and called each number on my housing list, getting nowhere until finally reaching an English-speaking woman. It turned out I was far from any lodging. The last bus back to town had long departed, and she said, "No taxi driver will come for you now unaccompanied. Too dangerous. The only way you're going to get to town is for me to take a taxi and come and get you." Stranger. He doesn't even know her name. And she directed me onto the road and to wait. Well, it was dark. Time passed. Coyotes howled. He felt the skin in the back of his neck tingle a little bit. Finally, a taxi pulled up about 20 feet ahead of me. A young woman burst out, threw her arms around me, kissed me, and whispered, "You're my husband. I'll explain later." In short, the taxi driver had attempted to take advantage of this woman alone. She was taking a real risk. She was only able to discourage him by saying that she was pregnant and she needed to get to her husband. It's that old song that when I was growing up, "My boyfriend's back, and boy, are you in trouble." In the end, this woman escorted me, a complete stranger, to a hotel, saw me safely registered, bid me farewell, asked nothing in return, and went off into the darkness. This, in spite of understanding the risks to her safety. Now, I have a paper sign-up sheet in the bulletin board for any women who want to sign up to volunteer to meet strangers at Logan Airport, hug them and welcome them and get them through customs. How many do you think are going to sign up? I don't think so. That's crazy. If my daughter said that when she was in college, I'd say, "Leave them alone with the coyotes, get safe," because we know there's too many opportunities for people to hurt others if we make ourselves too vulnerable. So I'm not saying throw caution to the winds, but this woman, what happened? Why did she risk all this and pay this in order to help him? I suspect that somehow in the brief conversation she picked up the divine in Willie, trusted him, took great risks in order to help him out of a jam which could have ended in violence, maybe his death. It was like they were brother and sister, never known each other, but discovered each other. This woman knew the sacred in Willie and got him out of trouble. Willie goes on, "If she can do this, what can I do to welcome the stranger to my church, my neighborhood, and across any border that might separate us?" When we baptized Reese and Sarah this morning, 2 precious children, part of what we did was to officially welcome them into the family of Christ. It really wasn't very risky, was it? It was pretty easy, to be honest. It was a celebration. It was fun. But don't forget the long-term implications. We believe in a God who has radically welcomed each one of us, knowing us full well, knowing everything about us. And now we're called to be just as welcoming. And not just to our friends, our family, or our fellow church members, but to the stranger. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Ann and I took the T home last night, and maybe you knew this, we didn't, that on the red line there's an interruption. You have to get off at JFK and then pick up a bus and get over to Broadway and then continue. And it was messy and crowded, and on the way back, this man about my age seemed lost, and I explained what had to happen. He started to talk to me for about 4 stops, and he wouldn't stop talking. And I just kept looking at him. I wasn't going to walk away. He wasn't crazy. He just blurted out, I know more about him than I know about most of my family. In 5-6 minutes, he was just talking about his early life, military, all kinds of stuff. And Ann said later, he really needed to talk. And I said, yeah. And she said, you listened to him. I said, I guess I did. I didn't hear everything because of the noise on the train. But when he left, and I left, I never really got to say goodbye because of the crowd. I felt like something had connected with us. Stranger. I didn't do anything that cost me anything, but something happened. If I saw him again, I'd go speak to him and introduce myself. Potential for that kind of connection is always there. I call it the image of God, the Holy Spirit, waiting to emerge if we accept it. Remember, we all participated in those baptismal vows for the girls today. At Christmas time, we make a big deal about the innkeeper who has no room for Mary and Joseph. But the real inn is our own hearts. Those doors need to be wide open. Willie's final prayer. Lord, help me to welcome the stranger, knowing that when I do, I welcome not only her, but you. You. Amen.